It's been a turbulent few months for Britain's Labour Party. After a general election which saw the worst Labour election result since 1987, Ed Miliband, then leader, resigned, triggering a leadership race. When Jeremy Corbyn, left-wing MP of Islington North since 1983, announced he was standing as a candidate, not even he expected to make it onto the ballot, admitting to the BBC that the first hurdle would be to meet the threshold of 35 Labour MP nominations. He was still 3 nominations short with 10 minutes to go, and just made the ballot after The Independent reported a last-minute surge, with MPs nominating him to broaden the terms of the debate rather than because they supported him. The bookies favoured Andy Burnham at 5-6. Jeremy trailed behind all other candidates with odds of 200 to 1. How things change. In the most astonishing event in living British political memory, Jeremy Corbyn, backbencher and unassuming socialist, is now frontrunner to take the Labour Party reins, less than 10 years after Tony Blair. Peter Kellner, from UK polling organisation YouGov, told the Islington Gazette that he would be astonished if Corbyn doesn't win. One betting company spokesperson stressed that we can recall no other example of a 200 to 1 chance becoming an odds-on favourite in a political betting market in our 50-plus year history of political betting. Initially, Corbyn's scant support in the media came from the right, tittering that his victory would guarantee the Conservatives the next general election. The Telegraph's Toby Young, in a piece titled "Why Tories Should Join Labour and Back Jeremy Corbyn," urged Conservatives to help consign the Labour Party to electoral oblivion in 2020. Such sentiment still exists in one wing of the Tory party, but their more far-sighted colleagues soon started to relate to Corbyn not as a clown, a joke the left were playing on themselves, but as a threat. The Telegraph's Oliver Cooper warned Tories against voting for Corbyn because, being Labour, they'll still have the same platform, but Corbyn's views will be more left-wing, so will shift the entire political debate to the left. The Guardian's Matthew Dancona urged Tories against smugness at Labour's Corbyn mania. Conservatives who think intelligently and strategically, he said, fret that a bearded 66-year-old socialist has ignited political debate in a way that absolutely nobody in the mainstream predicted. Corbyn's fellow candidates, too, were worrying about his outrageous popularity and issuing ever more desperate warnings. In what the Telegraph called a major hardening of rhetoric, Yvette Cooper, one of his 2 stronger challengers, warned that Labour will be pulled apart under Jeremy Corbyn. She called his policies, The Guardian reported, old solutions to old problems, denouncing them as not just not credible, but also not radical. Liz Kendall, the most unreconstructedly Blairite of Corbyn's drab rivals, called for voters to block him because Labour would be submitting a resignation letter to Britain if it elected him, the Telegraph reported. In The Independent's words, Liz Kendall calls for voting pact with Burnham and Cooper to prevent Jeremy Corbyn win. In an interview with the Evening Standard, she praised Chuka Umunna and Tristram Hunt for forming an anti-Corbyn pressure group to campaign for modernising policies if he wins, the doomsday scenario that went from preposterous to likely at a giddying speed. One by one, Labour Party bigwigs have declared their support for anybody except Corbyn. Tony Blair himself, on a break from doling out PR advice to dictators, called to voters in The Guardian, "Even if you hate me, please don't take Labour over a cliff edge. This is not a moment to refrain," he said, but for a rugby tackle. The Guardian approached Corbyn for a response, but hopes of flame wars were disappointed. "I don't do personal," he said. "I don't do abuse." Alistair Campbell, Blair's former spin doctor, was one of countless in a chorus denouncing Corbyn as unelectable, as the Huffington Post reports. Gordon Brown, though too coy to name the man himself, warned of the Labour Party going from being a party of government to being one of protest, as reported in The Guardian. Peter Mandelson went so far as urging the other 3 candidates to withdraw from the election, as the Telegraph reported, in a failed bid to attempt to stop Jeremy Corbyn winning on similar grounds. Blair, however, did not initially, unlike these other grandees, conflate the claims that Corbyn's policies are wrong with those that they would make Labour unelectable. True to his own messianic neoliberalism, the Telegraph reported that he'd oppose Corbyn even if the man's policies were vote winners, a tacit admission that they might be. It is precisely this fear that Corbyn is electable that lurks below the shrill claims that he is not. Surprisingly, these giants of New Labour haven't dissuaded Corbyn's supporters. Indeed, with each such speech, his ratings have rocketed and Corbynites have thanked Blair for helping. Though having, tragically, failed to garner Tony Blair's backing, the BBC reported that Corbyn had unexpectedly gained that of the 2 largest unions, Unison and Unite. And, according to the BBC in their article, is Jeremy Corbyn really going to win? Of the roughly 350 local Labour Party branches to have backed candidates, 152 have come out for Corbyn, far more than have backed any other candidate. To top this union and party members' backing, by the 15th of August, a poll by The Guardian involving voters from all parties showed him to be more popular than other Labour candidates within the wider electorate. Not only does Corbyn appear, in fact, to be electable, there's at least a reasonable claim that he's the most electable of the candidates. Unfortunately for those who would pull out all the stops to prevent his election, he's also one of the most principled MPs ever to serve, granting few opportunities for character assassination. With memories of grotesque parliamentary expenses scandals still fresh, the Islington Gazette gleefully reported Corbyn's own expenses bill. £8.70 for one printer cartridge. Unsurprisingly, the lowest of any MP in Parliament. There has, though, been much rooting around for mud to throw at him, with claims becoming more and more ludicrous. Claiming to speak for the vast majority of British Jews in its deep foreboding of Corbyn's success, the Jewish Chronicle alleged that there is overwhelming evidence of his association with, support for, and even in one case alleged funding of, Holocaust deniers, terrorists, and some outright anti-Semites. Corbyn's Jewish supporters responded with a flurry of letters pointing out his outstanding record of opposing racism, including anti-Semitism. The Guardian's Suzanne Moore, unable to pin anything on Corbyn himself, complains instead about the kind of people who support him online, claiming that the specialist subject of some of his supporters is vile abuse. She claims to be making some point that she should be allowed to express doubt about the man without risking vitriol, but then she immediately and unsubtly continues, perhaps hoping readers won't notice the two sets of unsubstantiated claims are unrelated, that if Labour decides to elect two blokes, Corbyn and Tom Watson, as his deputy, then all the misogyny in the Labour leadership race may well go unnoticed. More desperate still by now were the right. Even Toby Young was hangdog about his earlier antics. The Spectator ran a piece describing Jeremy Corbyn as the most dangerous man in British politics, and the Daily Mail dredged through their archives to try to reignite scandals from the late 80s, recently explaining that Corbyn's IRA links make him a national security risk. The Guardian has excelled itself. When Corbyn said that he would apologise for the Iraq war if elected, The Guardian contacted Iraqis in the war-torn country and ran with the bizarre front-page exclusives that they dismiss his planned apology. And when Corbyn announced his controversial policy of consulting women about what policies might help decrease sexual harassment, The Guardian published a ludicrous article titled, "Ladies, you won't be leading the Labour Party, so here's a women's-only train carriage." Perhaps more surprising was the intervention of David Runciman in the left-leaning London Review of Books, excoriating Ed Miliband for not trying to influence the choice of his successor to offer more than this unsustainable inspiration or uninspired continuity. Runciman concludes that if ever an election needed a bit of fixing, it was this one. Presumably, his claim that it pained him to say it is supposed to make this anti-democratic yearning something other than sinister. Corbyn's campaign has gathered staggering momentum, attention unheard of in British parliamentary politics. His crowds have regularly overspilled his venues, leading him to give roaming speeches like an A-list celebrity, rather than a gentle, white-bearded parliamentary socialist. The party's membership has increased from 194,000 to 270,000 since the general election, the fastest rate of increase, the Daily Mail reported, for 64 years. A further 120,000 people have registered as supporters eligible to vote in the leadership election. These numbers in part reflect the fury provoked by the general election. There's no question that they also reflect the enthusiasm aroused by the possibility of Corbyn becoming leader. Having made noises about the need to win back demoralised voters, the Labour Party, panicked at this surge, is now frantically disqualifying thousands of registered supporters from voting. The Telegraph reported that Corbyn supporters hit out after being blocked from voting in the leadership election. The party claimed it has reason to believe that those it excludes do not support its values. Given the radical shifts in these since its founding, one wonders, with Diane Abbott in The Guardian, what the Labour Party values are that people are being vetted against. War on Iraq, tuition fees, abstaining on the benefits cap. It will surprise no one to learn whose supporters are disproportionately being swept up in what Twitter is calling the #Labour purge. The media are dutifully full of speculation about far-left entryism in the campaign. But recall the branch's support. Consider the newly politicised voters, from a generation traduced as apathetic in the press, turning up to hear their unlikely hero speak. The dire warnings of democratic breakdown seem far-fetched given the scale of Corbyn mania. Indeed, contrary to claims of Trotskyist entryism, Corbyn's support lies, along with these newly enthused, with long-standing and loyal branch members, now attempting to reclaim their party from the Blairite coup of recent years. The Labour right are blindsided and incompetent. Despite the purge, The Times reports on late Labour voters driving a new surge for Corbyn. According to updated analysis, Corbyn is now on course to win 57% of the vote, an outright majority in the first round, making him Labour leader regardless of second and third preferences. But one has to wonder, if Corbyn does win, what kind of victory will it be? It will come in the context of unprincipled, open hostility from the media and the power brokers of his own party. They will not forgive the humiliation his victory will be to them. The BBC, asking, are Labour MPs worried about Jeremy Corbyn, noted that a small minority of Labour MPs nominated Corbyn, but if he wins, he will have a powerful mandate from ordinary members and trade unionists across the country. It is the battle between these camps, as much as between competing political parties, that looks set to define the astonishing, unlikely Labour leadership of Jeremy Corbyn.